Hello, Year 5. Welcome to our new unit. This week we are going to be astronomers. I hope you're really excited to be scientists again. I want you to ask yourselves, what do you already know about astronomy? And I'd also like you to ask yourselves, what would you like to find out during this unit? So take your pens or your pencils and your paper and write down anything you already know, anything you think you know, and anything you'd like to find out during this unit. So in front of you are some of the things that astronomers study, and we are going to touch on some of these things this week in our science unit. So astronomers study galaxies, the Big Bang, how it happened, when it happened, what it led to, stars and the constellations of stars in our sky, our solar system, which are the planets in our galaxy, how an eclipse happens, so when the moon comes in front of the sun, what happens, how do they line up, what does that lead to? It looks at things like orbits, rotations, day and night, and the seasons. So when I talk about orbits and rotations, we're focusing mostly on planets there and how they travel and how they turn and what they orbit. Astronomers also look at gravity and the gravitational pull of the moon, the exploration of space. So astronomers look at things like rocket launches and how they travel and satellites and what their jobs are, as well as asteroids, meteors, and comets. Now, our universe is so big and so vast, it goes beyond our imagination. It's impossible to imagine how big our universe is. But astronomers study as much of it as they can, and they learn lots and lots of facts. So even though it's really hard to comprehend how many stars there are in the sky or how far away some planets are, we're going to have to try our best to imagine just the scale of our universe. Now, there are more stars in the universe than the grains of sand on all of the beaches on planet Earth. So imagine that. Imagine every grain of sand on every single beach, not just in the UK, but in the whole world. So that's at least 1,000,000,000,000,000,000 grains of sand, and there are still more stars in our universe than that. Wow. The universe has no centre, and it's constantly expanding, which means getting bigger. It gets bigger every single second. This makes it impossible to ever reach the edge and to ever really know how big the universe is. Now, our Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Imagine how many candles that would be on a cake. That's so many. But that is just a third of the age of the universe, which is around 13.5 billion years old. Imagine being that old. Wow. The Earth is tiny in comparison with the rest of the universe. It could fit into the Sun 1.3 million times. How small does that make you feel? Imagine going into something and 1.3 million of you could fit in that space. How big would that space have to be for 1.3 million people to fit inside? Well, the Sun is 1.3 million times bigger than the Earth. That is amazing. So, if you have a partner with you, a brother or a sister, a friend, a teacher, a parent, I want you to ask some of these questions to your partner and have a quick discussion as you pause the video. I want you to talk about what is a star, what is a planet, what is a galaxy, and what is a solar system. Now, if you're working independently today and working by yourself, see if you can have a little think about that and maybe see if you can answer those questions by yourself. So a big well done to those of you who just paused the video or had a quick discussion about what those 4 things that I asked you about were. So here are the definitions of those 4 things. Now, a star is a luminous ball of gas, mostly made from hydrogen and helium, and it's held together by its own gravity. The closest sun to Earth is the Sun. Imagine that. The sun is actually a really, really big star. And again, it's like a massive ball of gas. Now, a planet is a celestial body moving in an elliptical orbit around a star. So planets are usually spherical and they move in like an oval shaped orbit, and it travels around, in our case, the sun. And the Earth, for example, can take about 365 days and a quarter to orbit the sun, which is what makes our years. A galaxy is a huge collection of gas, dust, and billions of stars and their solar systems. And again, they're all held together by gravity. Our galaxy is called the Milky Way. And in our galaxy, we have 8 planets, we have our own sun, and some of those planets have their own moons too. But astronomers believe there may be many, many other galaxies in our universe too. Now, a solar system consists of the sun and everything that orbits or travels around the sun. This includes the 8 planets and their moons, dwarf planets, and countless asteroids, comets, and other small icy objects. However, even with all these things, most of the solar system is just empty space. So although it's got all of these stars, all of these planets, all of these asteroids, countless comets, it's so big that most of the solar system is just an empty space. So I have a big question for you now. How did the universe begin? I want you to put your thinking hats on, and this is the question we're going to explore in today's lesson. How on earth did our universe begin? Get an answer ready, and then let's find out how in the next part of our video. Well, our universe began with a Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang theory is a theory of how the universe began. Now, a theory is like a scientific idea where you have a really strong feeling that this is what happened, and then you have to go about finding evidence to prove it's true. It says, the Big Bang theory, that the entire universe and everything in it was at once a point compressed into a tiny, infinitely small point. Now, this arrow here is pointing to a dot on the screen, and astronomers believe that this was the entire universe about 15 billion years ago. Literally that small. So, astronomers believe that about 15 billion years ago is when the Big Bang happened, and they call this time zero. Now, before the Big Bang, there was no concept of time. There was no way to know how much time had passed before the Big Bang. So the universe is infinitely small and infinitely hot. The forces that we know, things like gravity and magnetism, did not exist then. So imagine 15 billion years ago, astronomers believe there may have been absolutely nothing at all. Okay, time to use some Pearl Power. We're going to see if you can remember a link to one of our previous science units back when school was open. Now, we've just learned that 15 billion years ago, astronomers thought that the entire universe was the size of a dot, which then expanded and exploded. Now, 1 second, tick, that's how long it was. 1 second after the Big Bang, the first particles formed. And they believed it looked like this, with a proton, a neutron, and an electron orbiting around the outside. Now, this is incredibly hot, so the only particles that can exist are protons and neutrons. So my question to you now is, where have you seen this before? And what link can you make to our previous science unit back in term 2? So, 3 seconds after the Big Bang, protons and neutrons come together to form the nuclei of simple elements like hydrogen, helium, and lithium. And there are some pictures of these elements here. So well done those of you who can remember our States of Matter unit back in term 2 before Christmas, and how we studied things like protons and neutrons and nucleuses then. Okay, now let's jump to 300,000 years after the Big Bang. This is the beginning of the era of matter. Now, back in term 2, we did study the periodic table and we looked at some of the elements that were in it. So hopefully this is something that's a little bit familiar to some of you. Now, it's been 300,000 years since the Big Bang occurred, and the temperature is now low enough for electrons to bind with nuclei and form neutral atoms. So when the Big Bang occurred, it was so hot. It had to wait 300,000 years to cool down to a temperature where electrons were starting to bind to form atoms, which we know make up everything. So let's now jump to 300 million years after the Big Bang. The first stars are born. So imagine that. The Big Bang occurred, things began to take shape, but it wasn't until 300 million years later that stars were born. Groups of these stars will go on to become the earliest galaxies. Approximately, now this is where we cannot really be sure, but about 10 billion years after the Big Bang, our sun and the solar system that the Earth is in is born. Wow. So I hope you have enjoyed learning a little bit about astronomy, and we're going to continue with some more learning on this tomorrow. Your learning task today is to complete a passage by filling in the blanks. So we would like you to copy this to practice your handwriting, to practice your fluency, and then we would like you to fill in the blanks with the missing words. Now today I have given you those missing words. They are in red on your home learning sheet. So challenge yourself, try not to look at the red words. So you're using your knowledge to see if you are right, but they are there to support you if you need them. Good luck, and I will speak to you tomorrow.